The night was cloaked in an oppressive silence, broken only by the howling wind that whipped through the naked trees lining the desolate road. Colin, the truck driver, gripped the steering wheel of his 18-wheeler tighter as he squinted through the blizzard obscuring his view. He had been on the road for hours, the monotony of his journey interrupted only by the relentless snowfall that had begun to blanket the landscape in an eerie, unbroken white. The main highway was choked with a standstill of cars, their red taillights glowing like the eyes of some dormant beast in the night. Colin, familiar with the capricious nature of winter storms, decided against waiting in the stagnant line of vehicles. He knew another way and a detour that would take him through the heart of the forest. It was a risk, but one he felt was worth taking to avoid the delay. As he turned off the main road, the truck's headlights carved a path through the darkness, revealing the snow-laden branches that hung heavy overhead. The road here was narrow and treacherous, made more so by the ongoing blizzard. Colin's confidence in his knowledge of these roads was soon tested as the snowstorm intensified, reducing visibility to mere feet in front of him. It wasn't long before he saw it. A lone figure standing by the roadside, so out of place in this wilderness that Colin's first thought was that he was hallucinating. "Why is there a man here?" he muttered to himself, the words barely audible over the roar of the storm. The figure stood motionless. Colin eased the truck to a stop, though the slippery road caused him to overshoot the figure by a good distance. Rolling down the window, the cold bit at his skin as he called out, "Buddy, you need help? I give you a ride?" The figure remained still for a moment longer, then began to move toward the truck with a deliberate slowness that made Colin uneasy. As it drew closer, illuminated by the truck's headlights, the details of its appearance became clear, and they were deeply wrong. Dressed only in a t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers, the man was completely unprepared for the winter weather, but it was his face that held Colin's gaze, frozen in horror. Large black eyes, devoid of any white, stared back at him, and a wide mouth, filled with needle-sharp teeth, twisted into a predatory smile. Panic surged through Colin as he fumbled with the gears, the truck lurching forward awkwardly as he pressed down on the gas. A glance in the rearview mirror revealed the creature running after the truck with unnatural speed, its eyes glinting in the darkness. Colin's heart pounded in his chest as he pushed the vehicle to its limits, the icy road beneath them threatening to send them careening off at any moment. The forest thickened around them, and more figures emerged from the shadows of the trees, joining the pursuit with terrifying speed. Colin gasped with terror. These weren't people. They were ghastly creatures, like a pack of predators driving their prey to the slaughter. The creatures chased the truck until the forest gave way to the open road, and only then did they stop, as if the border were an invisible barrier they dared not cross. Leaning on the steering wheel, Colin shouted. A shiver of fear and relief ran through his body. The road in the mirror was a dark ribbon unwinding through the forest. Colin's mind raced, replaying the ghastly encounter over and over, like a broken film reel. He tried to rationalize what he had seen, to convince himself it was just a trick of the light, a figment of his overworked imagination. But the fear that clutched at his heart was all too real. The truck's cabin felt smaller now, a confining space that hummed with the tension of the recent chase. The heater blasted warm air against his face, doing little to thaw the chill that had settled deep in his bones. Colin's hands trembled on the wheel, every gust of wind and creak of the truck a reminder of the nightmare he had just escaped. As the miles passed, the forest began to thin, giving way to open fields shrouded in moonlight. The world outside seemed peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded in the woods. Yet, the sense of being watched, of being followed, clung to Colin like a second skin. He couldn't shake the feeling that the creatures were still out there, just beyond his sight, waiting. The first glimmer of civilization came in the form of a gas station and a small diner, their lights a beacon in the night. Colin pulled into the parking lot, the truck's engine idling as he gathered his courage. His reflection in the rearview mirror was a pale ghost, eyes wide and haunted. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out into the cold, and the sound of his boots crunching through the snow broke the oppressive silence of the night. The diner was a warm haven, the smell of coffee and fried food a balm to his frayed nerves. The few patrons inside paid him no mind as he made his way to the counter, their faces buried in late-night meals and quiet conversations. The owner, a grizzled man with kind eyes, slid a glass of whiskey. Colin downed the drink in one gulp, the warmth spreading through his chest like a promise of safety. It was then that he told his story, the words tumbling out in a rush, a desperate plea for understanding, for belief. But as he spoke of the creatures, of their chilling pursuit, he saw the disbelief in the owner's eyes, the barely concealed mockery. "Buddy, you're seeing things. You need to get some sleep," the owner said, his voice tinged with amusement. Colin wanted to argue, to convince him of the truth, but the doubt in the man's eyes was a clear dismissal. He returned to the truck, locking the doors behind him, a hollow feeling settling in his stomach. As he lay back in the seat, exhaustion finally claimed him, pulling him down into a restless sleep haunted by black eyes and sharp teeth. It was the silence that woke him, a suffocating absence of sound that pressed down on his chest. For a moment, Colin lay still, disoriented by the darkness that enveloped him. Then, succumbing to a growing sense of unease, he turned on the headlights. The world outside the truck exploded into view, and with it came a terror so profound it stole his breath away. Surrounding the truck, bathed in the harsh light of the headlights, were the creatures. Their eyes glowed with a malevolent light, their mouths twisted in smiles, and on their faces and hands, dark and glistening in the artificial light, was blood. Colin's scream was a ragged thing, a sound of pure, unadulterated fear. He fumbled with the keys, his fingers clumsy with panic as the creatures began to move closer, their movements sharp, taunting. The engine roared to life, and Colin slammed his foot down on the accelerator, its powerful vibrations a stark contrast to the deathly silence that had enveloped Colin moments before. The creatures, momentarily stunned by the horn's blaring cry, regained their composure, their black soulless eyes fixed on Colin with an anger that seemed to pierce through the glass and steel that separated them. Colin's mind raced, panic clawing at his thoughts as he frantically scanned his surroundings. The creatures encircled the truck, their numbers increased, each one a mirror of the others, with their oversized eyes and needle-filled maws. He slammed the truck into gear, the tires spinning in the gravel before finding purchase. The truck lurched forward, but one of the creatures leapt with terrifying agility, landing on the side of the passenger door. Its claws, sharp and unforgiving, pierced the metal with ease. The sound of rending steel, a physical blow to Colin's already frayed nerves. "Get off!" Colin screamed, his voice hoarse with fear. He swerved the truck, trying to dislodge the creature, but it clung on, its face pressed against the window. Its inhuman face with its wheezing maw a few inches from his own. Colin could see the malice in its eyes, a hunger that went beyond the physical, a darkness that threatened to consume him. In a desperate rush, Colin swerved toward the nearest post, the blow sharp but calculated. The impact threw the creature off, and it disappeared under the wheels of the truck. Colin's eyes widened with horror as he stared at the creature's claws dangling lifelessly, stuck in the hole in the door. Colin didn't pause to breathe, to process. He pushed the truck faster, the engine howling in protest as he raced down the deserted road, leaving the creatures and their blood-curdling screeches behind. As the sun began to rise, casting a pale light over the landscape, Colin felt the grip of fear loosen ever so slightly. He reached his hometown as the day fully broke, the familiar streets a balm to his ragged senses. The truck stop loomed ahead, a final destination that had never before made so welcoming. Colin pulled in, his body moving on autopilot, every action a monumental effort. Stepping out of the truck, Colin was met by the concerned looks of passers-by, their eyes drawn to the claw marks on the passenger door, the physical evidence of his unbelievable tale. But Colin had no words for them, no explanations that could bridge the gap between their reality and his. He made his way home, the streets empty and quiet in the early morning light. The door to his house opened, and there stood Amanda. "Colin, what happened?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Colin could only shake his head. He embraced her, the familiar feel of her arms around him a lifeline. Christmas approached. The town was alive with holiday spirit, but Colin moved through it like a ghost, haunted by memories he could not escape. On Christmas Eve, with the house bathed in the soft glow of the Christmas tree lights and the air filled with the scent of pine and holiday spices, Colin tried to embrace the festive spirit for the sake of his family. He read bedtime stories to his 5-year-old son, tucking him in with a gentle kiss. "Good night, buddy," Colin whispered. "Sweet dreams." He stepped out into the backyard, the cold air a sharp contrast to the warmth of the house. Lighting a cigarette, Colin looked up at the night sky, searching for peace in the infinite expanse above, and then he saw them, 3 figures standing at the edge of the yard, the creatures from the forest, their eyes large and black in the dim light, their mouths stretched in grins, stood watching him. The cigarette fell from his fingers, and he froze, watching the 3 horrible figures approach him. Nocturnal predators who never let go of their prey.